My future father-in-law is very face-conscious and loves to show off my wedding day. My father-in-law got up early and secretly rented several buses to go back to his hometown in the countryside without telling any of us, and picked up hundreds of poor neighbors. We had 10 banquets that we ordered for 3,000 yuan each, because he didn't discuss it with any of us. These sudden guests were completely beyond our expectations. The banquet hall, which was originally unable to accommodate 10 tables, became insufficient. We had to ask the hotel to temporarily add 2 more tables for us, which were also the poor neighbors who came to the wedding banquet with their families and only contributed 30, 50, or 100 yuan each. The moment I exchanged rings should have been the happiest moment of my life, but I saw them packing up the Australian lobster, king crab and abalone soup that had just been served. I took away 2 bottles of wine worth 900 yuan each from the table, and gave them to my father-in-law to distribute. More than 200 boxes of souvenirs were snatched away. Because of the presence of friends, colleagues and relatives, I could only pretend that nothing happened. When my best friend's bridesmaid asked me if I had wedding candy, my husband, who was already busy and exhausted, had to find someone to buy dozens of bags of wedding candy outside to perfunctorily give them to friends, colleagues and relatives who came from afar. My father-in-law earned enough face on my wedding day, and he held his head high in front of his neighbors in his hometown. On the most important wedding day in my life, I made a fool of myself and was in a mess. Because of this incident, except for the wedding day, I didn't say a word to my father-in-law for a year, and my husband didn't give him a penny again. However, my husband and I both work in other places, and we have little contact with my parents-in-law. My husband is a very opinionated person who loves me very much, so I didn't see it and I didn't feel annoyed. This happened 1 year after I scolded my father-in-law, and I didn't investigate it in detail. 1 year later, my husband and I were ready to have a baby, and I did get pregnant, but because I was in poor health after I got pregnant, I had to resign and return to my hometown to wait for the birth in order to protect the fetus. Because of this, I had more contact with my parents-in-law. One day, I was busy in the room, but suddenly I heard my mother-in-law's cry for help from outside. I hurried into my mother-in-law's room, only to find that she was rolling on the bed, her face was sallow, and her forehead was covered with cold sweat. I asked my mother-in-law what was wrong, but she was almost incoherent, panting, and said for a long time that I had a stomachache. I was afraid that something had happened to my mother-in-law, and I was about to take a taxi to the hospital, but my mother-in-law stopped me and said that she was going to call my father-in-law and asked my father-in-law to drive her there. I just realized that my father-in-law was not at home, but I thought that he was out and I didn't know when he would come back. I couldn't stand the pain here, so I might as well take a taxi to the hospital first. But my mother-in-law said that the taxi fare was expensive, she was worried about the money, and she had to call my father-in-law. I had no choice but to wait for my mother-in-law to call my father-in-law. Because of this wait, I heard a conversation that made me applaud. After the call was connected, my mother-in-law asked where my father-in-law was and asked him to come back and take her to the hospital. My father-in-law said that he was accompanying a neighbor in his hometown to register for medical treatment. My mother-in-law asked him if his family had no car or no one, and called you back from the county to drive them to the hospital. They didn't find me. You don't understand that there is no one here to accompany his second child. I can't leave. I will accompany him to register first. You should bear it for a while. I will go back to pick you up after he finishes the treatment. She didn't ask you for help, but you drove all the way back to pick her up and went to the hospital with her. You even accompanied her to see the doctor. I was in so much pain that I almost died, but you asked me to wait. My mother-in-law was in so much pain that she could hardly breathe, but she couldn't help but questioned her on the phone with red eyes, but there was no response from the other end of the phone. I regretted letting my mother-in-law call. It must be so painful for her to hear such heartbreaking words when she was sick. I went over and snatched my mother-in-law's phone, trying to help her up. The taxi fare was only a few yuan more, and I always wanted to take a taxi to the hospital. I don't know if my mother-in-law was hit or sick. She was paralyzed on the bed without any strength. I had a threatened miscarriage, and I didn't dare to use all my strength to help my mother-in-law. I could only call 120 and spent 200 yuan to send my mother-in-law to the nearest hospital for treatment. The doctor took an x-ray and blood test in the emergency room and said it was gallstones, which was not a big problem. He asked my mother-in-law to change her diet and prescribe some medicine, and then let us leave. But after returning, my mother-in-law's tears were like a flood. She kept crying and scolding. He said that my father-in-law was familiar with everyone in the villages in his hometown, and he had a pair of ears just to find out what happened to anyone's family. Whenever someone's family had something wrong, he would rush to their house without waiting for others to ask for help, and help them spend money on his fellow villagers like water. But if anyone in the family asked him for a penny, it was like asking for his life. He silently handed paper to my mother-in-law on the side, wanting to comfort her but not knowing how to start. That night I called my husband on a video call and told him everything. Then I asked him, does your father always like to stick to others like this, regardless of whether they are close or distant? Didn't I tell you a long time ago that he was sick? Think about what he did when we got married. I get angry when I talk about this. The banquet and the wine, the poor guys he invited ate my tens of thousands of yuan of money, and there was only 3,000 yuan. Do you know what he did in my senior year of high school? He drove drunk and killed someone and was locked up. In my senior year of high school, I felt that the sky was gray. If I hadn't had a father like him, would I have been able to read such a rubbish book? Whose father can't help his children like this, and he is also holding them back. My husband's voice was a little hoarse. He was silent for a long time before asking me. I said before that I would settle down in Nanjing and cut off ties with my father, and you thought I was cold. You regret it now, right? These words made me silent. It was indeed not the first time he told me this, but he did not say much in detail before, and I had never lived with my in-laws before. I thought that people would correct their mistakes. Who would have thought that my father-in-law was a repeat offender? I have never met such a person before. Who can believe that Su Dachong in the TV series can really be reflected in reality? I guess I was wrong, but we are not penniless now and cannot afford a house in Nanjing. I am in this situation now. If we settle down in Nanjing again, wouldn't it be a pretense? I'm sorry, wife. I have made you and the baby suffer with me. It will be at most 3 years. After 3 years we will be able to settle down in Nanjing. My husband felt very guilty, but I did not blame him at all. Instead, I admired and felt sorry for him because when my husband was only 26 years old in 2015, he was already a man who seized the trend of the times and earned millions a year. He gave birth to a winner. But that year, when he was planning to settle down with me in Nanjing, my mother-in-law happened to be diagnosed with leukemia, and he took out all his money to treat her. Later, he had no savings and did not dare to get married. He was a male chauvinist and was afraid that I would suffer with him after marriage. He was eager to make money, and he tossed between starting a business and working several times, but did not make much money. The year before last, he learned from his mistakes and for my sake, he honestly accepted a job with an annual salary of 600,000 yuan, and then got married and stopped tossing. He is really a sober, strong and responsible person, but a little insecure, and all these characteristics seem to be forced out by my father-in-law. Because he hates his father, he takes it as a warning and never lets himself become the same as him. Husband, in fact, as long as your father doesn't make trouble and goes back to work after the baby is born, our lives will get better and better. I comforted my husband and looked forward to a better life with him. We were affectionate for another half an hour before hanging up, but my husband and I did not imagine everything was beautiful, but who knew that my father-in-law would explode in a few days. At noon that day, when my mother-in-law was on the way back from the prenatal checkup with me, my eldest sister-in-law called my mother-in-law's mobile phone and said that my father-in-law was drinking in his hometown and hit a neighbor's car after getting drunk. When the neighbor found out, he couldn't get through to my father-in-law, so he went to the police station to report the case. He used the mobile phone number registered with the license plate number to contact my eldest sister-in-law, because the car was the one that my husband bought for my mother-in-law's convenience when she was treating leukemia across provinces. However, it was inconvenient for him to go back to his hometown at that time, and in order to protect his father-in-law, he registered the car under the name of my eldest sister-in-law. After my mother-in-law finished talking on the phone with my eldest sister-in-law, she didn't care about the face of a bus passenger and immediately broke down. That bastard only knew how to waste money. Why didn't he hit himself to death? While cursing, she frantically found my father-in-law's number and dialed it, but my father-in-law's phone couldn't be reached. So my mother-in-law called my eldest uncle in her hometown again, and my uncle's phone was answered. The call got through, but my uncle said he was working outside and he didn't know what happened at home. My mother-in-law didn't have the phone number of her neighbors in her hometown, and she couldn't contact my father-in-law, so she didn't know what was going on. I was a little anxious, so I called my husband. I asked him what to do now. Your father hasn't answered the phone. He must be drunk and still sleeping. The police station has been urging people. Otherwise, my mother and I will go over and compensate the money first. What compensation? You and my mother are not allowed to go. Let him solve the problem he did by himself. If he doesn't pay, let the police arrest him. Anyway, I won't pay him a penny. My husband said that he would not allow my mother-in-law and I to go back to our hometown until he died. My mother-in-law and I didn't know what happened. We waited anxiously. Around 3 or 4 in the afternoon, my father-in-law called my mother-in-law back and said that he had a car accident and had no money, so he asked my mother-in-law for money to compensate the other party. I watched my mother-in-law answer the phone silently, curious whether she would be soft-hearted towards my father-in-law, but my mother-in-law spoke angrily into the phone. If you don't have the money, pay it back yourself. If you can't pay it back, you'll die. Then after hanging up the phone, she handed the phone to me, Ning Ning, and asked me to leave 100 yuan for her and transfer the rest of the money to your WeChat. Then change a payment password for me. That old bastard knows my password and will steal my money. My mother-in-law's words made me speechless and funny. How could my father-in-law, who is over 50 years old, actually steal money? But I still did what she said. After that, I sent a message to my husband and told him that the compensation would be about 2,000 yuan. My husband replied, "Well, don't worry about him, let him figure it out." I looked at my husband's message and suddenly an idea came to my mind. Why don't we sell the car? Our mother's 5-year recovery period has passed this year, and there will be no risk of recurrence in the future, and we don't have to go to Nanjing for treatment. You don't drive in other places all year round, and I don't have a driver's license. It's your father who drives out to cause trouble every day. Helping is helping other families, and it won't be convenient for us. It's better to sell the car. That's fine. You wait until I get off work and go back to talk to our mom about selling the car. My husband readily agreed. I wanted to say something else, but considering my status, some of the things I said were not appropriate, so I swallowed my words back. The next day, my father-in-law came back from his hometown, and he didn't mention how the car accident was handled, nor did he ask my mother-in-law and me for money. In the evening, I video called my husband and asked him if he had transferred money to your father. My husband said no. I knew he wouldn't lie to me for this, but I was very curious about how my father-in-law solved the car accident. Do you think your father might have hidden some private money? Just like when we got married, your father had no income at that time, so where did he get the money to rent a car? My husband thought about it for a while. The money my mother had reimbursed for medical treatment was reported to his card, but all in all, he only made more than 200,000 yuan from me. Maybe he embezzled the reimbursement money and kept it for himself. Hearing this, I remembered what my mother-in-law said about my father-in-law stealing money. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry about this matter. My husband and I tried every way to save money for the baby. In order to save a few cents on buying vegetables, my mother-in-law bargained with people in the market for a long time, but my father-in-law kept finding ways to calculate our money. How could there be such a father in the world? And then we have to guard against your father like a thief because he is a thief in the house. My husband and I were joking, but who knew that this would come true in the future? When my husband came back from the Spring Festival holiday, I talked to my mother-in-law about selling the car. My mother-in-law didn't have any objection, but we had to visit relatives during the Spring Festival, and the used car trading market was closed during the year, so my husband planned to sell the car after the new year. It's just that no one mentioned the matter to my father-in-law. On the second day of the new year, my father-in-law drove us to visit relatives at my uncle's house like last year. We had an appointment for lunch, and the whole family ate around a big table in the house. I had to go to the toilet because of frequent urination during pregnancy, and the toilet in my hometown happened to be the kind built outside the house, so I ran outside to use the toilet. But it was a coincidence that just when I reached the corner of the toilet, I saw my father-in-law looking left and right, and sneaking out of the neighbor's door. My husband's hometown is the kind of place where each household is built separately, so there is only this neighbor within 100 meters of my uncle's house. This discovery made me very depressed, because my father-in-law often goes back to his hometown, which is my uncle's house. So if I am not mistaken, my father-in-law had a car accident before, and he should have hit the neighbor next to my uncle's house. But if my father-in-law had hit someone else's car before, and the other party reported him to the police station, the two families must have torn their faces apart. It has come to this extent, and he still ran to pay New Year's greetings to others during the new year. I went to the toilet depressed and went back, and muttered about this with my husband. My husband has always been annoyed with my father-in-law. After chatting for a few words, he went around to my stomach and said that I shouldn't be angry when I'm pregnant, and asked me to pay less attention to him, because his father would get angry if he saw him too much. I can't get angry now that I'm pregnant. This can be said to be the way of life he has figured out after living with my father-in-law for many years. I was amused by him and soon forgot about it. After dinner, my husband urged my father-in-law to leave because he didn't like staying in his hometown. He didn't like anything my father-in-law liked. He left without saying goodbye. My husband and mother-in-law quickly sat in the car and waited for my father-in-law to drive the car. But my father-in-law kept standing outside, as if he had endless things to say to my uncle. Finally, my husband became impatient and opened the car door and went out to call my father-in-law. My father-in-law reluctantly got into the driver's seat and said goodbye to my uncle's family outside. Just as my father-in-law started the engine, the big black iron gate of my uncle's neighbor's house opened, and a heavily made-up woman walked out from behind the door. Because our car was parked right in front of the gate of my uncle's neighbor's house, as soon as the woman came out, I could see everything about her clearly, but when I saw her appearance clearly I was stunned, because her face was covered with makeup. It was obviously more expensive than other women I met in the county, and she was wearing my favorite TF16 on her lips, and her eyebrows were the natural gray-brown that I am most used to. What's even more strange is that when I opened the car window, I actually smelled my favorite alluring woman's fragrance. I was completely stunned. 2 days ago, my husband came home and found that I was still using cosmetics. He was afraid that it would hurt the baby, so he forced all my cosmetics and skincare products into the trash can. But now, all the cosmetics thrown into the trash can by my husband turned out to be on a woman of my age in the countryside. For a moment I felt physically nauseous. I couldn't tell whether it was because the things I used were used by others, or because my father-in-law secretly picked up our discarded cosmetics from the trash can and gave them away. But it was a bit embarrassing to talk about things that had already been thrown away, so I didn't wash my hands of it. Just because my husband started work on the 7th day, he bought it on the 6th day the ticket to Nanjing. Before leaving, he found my eldest sister-in-law and asked her to borrow the car while he looked for a buyer and sold the car. The car was originally under my eldest sister-in-law's name, so the operation was simple. We had discussed this matter, and no one told my father-in-law. Before my eldest sister-in-law drove the car away, I was cautious and secretly dragged my eldest sister-in-law into my bedroom. Sister, I always feel that our father often goes back to his hometown. There is something fishy. When you are free, go back and take a look. After thinking about it, I still say one more sentence, pay special attention to the neighbor next to my uncle's house. I think our father has an unusual relationship with that neighbor. My eldest sister-in-law and I exchanged glances. Maybe because we are both women, she almost understood what I meant in seconds, but she immediately denied it. It is impossible. There are only 2 women in the neighbor next to our uncle's house, a woman and a widow. He doesn't like the woman. The widow is about the same age as you and she doesn't like him either, but if she doesn't like people she might like someone else. Where are the things? I exchanged glances with the doctor again. By the way, do you know whose neighbor the broken leg is? I don't know the people from my husband's hometown. They say that people like to speak and shout in dialect. I can't tell who is who at all, but in my mind I suddenly connected the broken leg with that neighbor. Who broke his leg and when did it happen? My eldest sister-in-law looked confused. I cleared my throat and deliberately asked loudly to my mother-in-law who was playing certain audio in the living room. Mom, when you had gallstones before, wasn't my dad taking someone to the hospital for treatment? Who was the one with the broken leg? Wasn't that the old turtle shell next to your uncle? I ran around for their family and cleaned their car for a penny. I even called the police to the police station. The old turtle shell family is all old turtle shells. The mother-in-law's cursing came from the living room, and soon turned into the sound of playing certain audio, but my eldest sister-in-law looked at me with a look of surprise. She opened her mouth for a long time, and wanted to say something but didn't say it. My husband came back from the bathroom, and my elder sister-in-law was in our room with a puzzled look on her face. What were you talking about with my sister? When my elder sister-in-law saw my husband coming back, she hurriedly got up and said goodbye with a double meaning. Don't worry, leave it to me. After that, she came over and patted me on the shoulder, saying that our mother's illness had delayed you for several years. Now that you just had a child, don't always think about it. Your most important task now is to take good care of the fetus. If you have anything, let me come. It only takes me half an hour to drive here. It's very convenient. After seeing off my elder sister-in-law, my husband also went to Nanjing to work. On the day my husband left, my father-in-law borrowed a motorcycle from somewhere and rushed back to his hometown. I observed that my father-in-law sent a message to my elder sister-in-law. That night, my father-in-law came back from outside with a heavy heart. His face was not very good and he smelled of alcohol. My mother-in-law smelled it and scolded my father-in-law in front of me. My father-in-law's face became darker and darker. He even pushed my mother-in-law to the ground and started quarreling with her. I know it's trivial, isn't it, because of you that I drink? You never have a spare mouth all day long, and everything is trivialized by you. Why did you push my mother? She said it was because you drank. I was angry at my father-in-law's behavior, and walked over to help my mother-in-law up, but unexpectedly my father-in-law slapped me. Do you have the right to speak? Who do you think you are? Get out. I was stunned for a moment. I have lived for 30 years and no one has ever hit me in the face. When my mother-in-law saw me being beaten, she crawled up from the ground, then went to the kitchen to get a kitchen knife, and protected me behind her ferociously. If you dare to hit Ningning again, I will chop you to death. Get out, get out. I shouted at my father-in-law at the top of my voice, confronted him for a while, turned around and slammed the door. After my father-in-law went out, the kitchen knife fell to the ground with a bang, and then my mother-in-law turned around and hugged me, constantly comforting me. It's obviously okay, you have your mother and now you have a child, don't be sad. The mother-in-law forced a smile. She tried to comfort me with her face, but her voice was trembling and her hands were shaking. I was originally very angry and aggrieved, but when my mother-in-law did this, I suddenly felt that all the grievances were nothing. I tried to force a smile and told my mother-in-law, Mom, I'm fine. As soon as I finished speaking, my mother-in-law burst into tears like a child. That night, my mother-in-law blocked the back door with the dining table and chairs, and then slept with me. After she fell asleep, I sent a message to my husband. When I talked to my husband, the things that were originally in the past suddenly became aggrieved again. As soon as I sent the message, my husband's video call came in. The noisy ringtone was particularly abrupt in the night. I glanced at my mother-in-law who had just fallen asleep, and quickly hung up the phone and told her that my mother-in-law was beside me. My husband sent several hug emojis in a row, and then said in a firm tone that when I go back on May Day, I will sell the house in the county and raise a few tens of thousands of dollars. Then we will pay a down payment in Nanjing. That's it. Don't be stubborn with me, dear. We are suffering now. And I won't have to suffer in the future. Looking at my husband's message, I typed out a lot of words. I found a locksmith tomorrow to change the locks of the house. Don't give him the key. Anyway, there is a house in my hometown and he will not have to worry about having no place to live. Don't let him enter our house in the future. Looking at my husband's instructions, I nodded again. We planned everything and thought that everything would be fine. But the next day, my mother-in-law received a text message, which gave all of us a heavy blow. The balance on my mother-in-law's card suddenly changed from 3,862.50 yuan to zero. My mother-in-law and I thought her bank card was stolen, so we accompanied her to the bank to check urgently. Unexpectedly, the bank told us that my father-in-law had made a 3-party guarantee with someone before and borrowed 200,000 yuan from the bank. The final repayment date was overdue. In accordance with regulations, they sent reminders to the lenders in advance, but none of the 3 lenders repaid the debt. As my father-in-law's spouse, my mother-in-law has the obligation to help my father-in-law repay the debt. Moreover, for those who have lost their credibility, the bank has the right to seal, seize, freeze and dispose of the property of the person being executed. My mother-in-law made a big fuss in the bank, and I explained the situation to the bank, saying that we had no idea she had taken out a loan outside, and we had never received any reminders for repayment, but it was of no avail. My mother-in-law was so angry that she almost crashed to death in front of the bank. I had to hold her tightly to stop her. After coming out of the bank, my mother-in-law called my father-in-law like crazy, but my father-in-law's phone was turned off as if it was dead. When I got home, I couldn't stand it anymore. Mom, please divorce my dad. I know it's inappropriate for me as a daughter-in-law to say this, but I really can't stand having such a father-in-law. He is like a bottomless pit, and I have no idea when he will make any trouble. Even if Lin and my sister have moved their household registration from home, what can you do to him? He is so cruel. Can't he still find all kinds of tricks to cheat us? I really don't understand you. You know clearly what kind of person he is. Why haven't you divorced him yet? The baby in my belly will be born in a few months, and I can't let my child endure it with you. If you don't divorce him, I will divorce Lin. Mother-in-law looked at me with her red and swollen eyes, and opened her mouth several times. It seemed that she had made up her mind to divorce. I will divorce him. That night, my eldest sister-in-law came to our house, and as soon as she entered the door, she shouted to my mother-in-law, Mom, you must divorce him. My eldest sister-in-law was also very angry when she came in. I stopped my eldest sister-in-law with my eyes. My eldest sister-in-law hesitated for a moment, but in the end she didn't tell me what she told me on WeChat before she came. Because my mother-in-law had leukemia a few years ago. Although the disease was cured, her body had blood again after chemotherapy. It's changed all over, and it's not as good as before. Now the public loan issue has made him breathless. If he knows about the mess in his hometown, I'm afraid he can't stand it. He did such a thing. Don't delay looking for him. Divorce him early and break up with him early, so that we don't have to be dragged down by him for you. The eldest sister-in-law swallowed the words that were on the tip of her tongue. The mother-in-law hummed. Seeing this, I quickly added, Mom, you go back and have a rest first. Drink more water and calm down. I have a way to solve this problem. Don't be angry, as long as you divorce him, this problem can be solved. After sending the mother-in-law back to the room, the mother-in-law seemed to start calling again. When the call couldn't get through, she started scolding me, her father-in-law. She was so angry that she took her mobile phone and gave him her iPad without a SIM card, asked him to watch videos, and then went to my and my husband's bedroom with the eldest sister-in-law. What do you have? Can you get that immortal old man and that vixen back? My eldest sister-in-law asked me. I shook my head at her. It's not that I can't get them back, but I think what she just told me on WeChat has a loophole. Before my eldest sister-in-law came, she told me on WeChat that about a few months after my husband and I got married, the eldest son of my uncle's neighbor died, and the eldest son's wife became a widow. After my father-in-law, who likes Tian and is a bootlicker in the old family, knew about it, he hurried back to help people deal with the eldest son's funeral, and often went back to care about the husband who just died. The widow and the two got together, and this matter spread in the old family. The old family was laughing at us behind our backs, but our family and the widow's family didn't know. A few days ago, the young widow said that her husband was dead, and it was boring to stay in her husband's house, so she packed up and left. My eldest sister-in-law felt yes, the loan that my father-in-law took out from the bank was used to elope with that vixen, but this is not right, and it does not match the facts we know so far. The bank clearly said that my father-in-law was not the lender, but the guarantor because the lender did not repay the money, and he was implicated as the guarantor and was forced to perform the repayment obligation, because the guarantor has joint and several liability, but if he was just a guarantor, he should not have been able to get the 200,000 loan, so he could not elope with the young widow. Moreover, judging from his reaction when he came back last night, he was clearly furious, and he did not have the pleasure of getting the money and the beauty. The joint guarantee of 2 or 3 people is to mortgage the credit of 3 people, one person takes out a loan, and the other 2 guarantee it, not that 3 people take out a loan together. My father-in-law is not the lender, but the guarantor. In addition to my father-in-law, there are 2 other people, one guarantor is the young widow, and the other is the lender. My father-in-law is the guarantor. My mother-in-law's assets have been forcibly frozen, but the assets of my uncle's neighbor have not been enforced. This shows that although the young widow is the guarantor, her household registration is no longer in her husband's family, so her husband's family has not been implicated. This shows that she has planned this for a long time. Then who is the third guarantor? What is the relationship between the third person and the young widow and the father-in-law? The young widow also ran away after the accident. She should have run away earlier, but this person ran away like a dog. What happened to him? After listening to my analysis, my eldest sister-in-law asked me, according to what you said, my father was killed by others, and now he has jumped, which is not certain. Only the parties involved know about this. How can there be such a person like him in the world? Stupid and dumb. It's okay that he got the money, but the key is that he can't get it. How could I have a father like him? My eldest sister-in-law complained for a while and asked me what the solution was. I'm not sure about this, but I think my guess should be right, and the solution should be useful. You go to the young widow's in-laws' house first and help me type her name. Also, ask about the previous incident of your father hitting a car. Find out whose car he hit, how serious the hit was, and how he compensated later. But you and my brother-in-law should not let others ask, otherwise it will ruin the subsequent plans. Thinking of this, I typed the name on WeChat and sent it to my eldest sister-in-law. It was the name of the third person in the 3-person joint guarantee loan. My eldest sister-in-law asked me to keep it a secret and couldn't tell the difference. She took a look at the name and left. My eldest sister-in-law opened the message and soon, the person was said to be the young widow's relatives from her mother's side came here to do business. As for the one who took the car, it was the young widow's husband's family who didn't care about it at all. After my eldest sister-in-law told me, she started to scold him and beat the old man. He didn't take the car at all. He just teamed up with others to stage a drama to cheat us of our money. No wonder our car was not repaired and we couldn't see where it was scratched. You don't have to worry about what happens next. Just sell the car as soon as possible. My eldest sister-in-law nodded and said nothing more. A few days later, my mother-in-law and I picked a sunny day and returned to our hometown in the countryside. I told my mother-in-law that I have a way to force my father to come out, but we have to sell the house in the countryside. Mom, are you willing to sell it? Once the house is sold, all the relatives will know about our family. My mother-in-law hesitated. At his age, he cares about the opinions of his family. You will be with us in the future. Going to Nanjing, you have nothing to do with these people. Why don't you care what they think or say? And even if you don't sell the house, do you think they don't know? My mother-in-law is a good person. After I married my husband, she treated me better than my own mother. I really don't want her to come back here one day and suddenly hear those disgusting things. Why don't I call Lingling to ask? My mother-in-law is still undecided, but I asked her mother-in-law, how much do you think the house in your hometown can be sold for? Can it be sold for 20,000? My mother-in-law shook her head. What about 10,000? It's unlikely. It depends on whether there is anyone to buy it. Then do you know how much Lingling earns a day? She earns 2,000 a day. If you call her to tell her about selling the house, she will definitely know what my father did. She may have to rush back in a hurry. It will take a week to buy another house in her hometown. But is selling the house such a big deal? The house in the county town belongs to Lingling and me. Lingling told me a few days ago that she has decided to sell the house in the county town. The house in the countryside belongs to you and my father. You have to make your own decision. This is your business. If you sell all your houses and let the house in the countryside be sold as well, where will the child live in the future? You are about to give birth and you are still making a fuss about this. My mother-in-law is very dissatisfied with me for hiding it from him. She scolded me that this was not what I wanted, but that I was forced to do so by Ling Ling's father. He can borrow 200,000 today and 300,000 or 500,000 tomorrow, which means that he steals and sells everything in the house every day. You still want to keep this house and live with him for the rest of your life, right? Anyway, Ling Ling and I will not go back to our hometown in the future. You must make a choice between Ling Ling and his father. But I followed you to Nanjing, don't I still owe money? That is a small amount of money, can you think about the overall situation? You stay in your hometown with Ling Ling's father. Ling Ling and I will not feel at ease even if we go to Nanjing. You know how filial she is. She can be cruel to her father, but she can't let you go. Do you want to watch her being dragged to death by her father? My mother-in-law has never been to school since she was a child and has many concerns. I know it is difficult for her to make this decision, but I can only use my husband to force her to make a decision. My mother-in-law finally made up her mind to sell the house after persuading her so earnestly. Seeing that she agreed, I immediately took out the pre-printed advertising paper from my bag and posted it on the house in my hometown. I also went around the village with my mother-in-law and posted a lot of recommendations. I was so well prepared. She asked me if I had planned it a long time ago. I smiled at her and said, "Isn't this all for your unborn grandson?" My mother-in-law said, "Ning Ning, actually I know you are not a heartless person. I know everything you said, but you did it so ruthlessly that I suddenly can't accept it. Lin Lin always says that I am short-sighted and spend a lot of money for a small amount of money, but I have never been to school. Mom, I know that although you have not been to school, you are actually very clear-headed. Otherwise, I would not dare to tell you this directly. My parents-in-law are getting divorced. If it were someone else's family, I would have been scolded to death. There would not be such an old person in other families." The mother-in-law sighed and took the advertising paper from my hand. "You sit on the side and take a rest. I will post it." I did not reject the mother-in-law's action. I found a stone nearby to sit down. "Mom, I always felt that Ling Ling and my sister can be so close because of you. I actually admire you very much, but I just don't understand why you haven't divorced my father-in-law for so many years." The mother-in-law didn't look back, but her movements paused. "Done, the children without parents in my hometown are useless. Although your father is a bastard, he is the father of both of them. It's not that I haven't thought about divorcing him, but I'm old and don't want to make trouble. I'm afraid of being laughed at." "Mom, no one will laugh at you, they just think you are brave. The house in my hometown is behind my uncle's house, and it is also a neighbor of the young widow's in-laws." After everything was done, my mother-in-law and I went to visit my uncle's house. When they were chatting, I went to play with my uncle's grandson and teased him a few words. Then my mother-in-law left. Not long after, the house in my hometown was bought by the young widow's parents-in-law for 48,000 yuan. The parents-in-law planned to use the house to marry a wife for their second son with a broken leg. They felt like they had gotten a great deal. I know what the two sisters are happy about. My father-in-law hasn't been back to the county for such a long time, and he has no money. He must have been hiding in the house in our hometown, but he just avoided us and didn't show up. My uncle's family and the young widow's parents-in-law must have seen him. The young widow's parents-in-law thought that something had happened to our family, and they got a good deal by buying the house at a lower price. Moreover, the house was right next to their house, which was convenient, so they were happy. But this was also the best of both worlds. We also used them to occupy the house and force my father-in-law out. Because my mother-in-law's bank card was frozen, the money was transferred to the card, and my eldest sister-in-law contacted a lawyer to help her deal with it. The divorce was also heard in court, but my eldest sister-in-law and I accompanied my mother-in-law to attend. My father-in-law still did not show up that day, so my mother-in-law applied for divorce litigation. On the second day of the divorce case in which my father-in-law was absent, my eldest sister-in-law hurriedly called my mother-in-law and asked us to go to the police station. But when we arrived at the police station, not only did we see that there was a little widow named Wang Jinxiang, she was Zhang Quan's cousin and my father-in-law. As for why the police called Wang Jinxiang and Zhang Quan, it was because I teased my eldest uncle's grandson and asked him to go play with Wang Jinxiang's son. By the way, I spread some childish words, such as the daughter-in-law suddenly packed up and left, the son died accidentally, and the cousin suddenly appeared and got a huge sum of money. These details were pieced together to see how the neighbors could imagine a big drama. So I used them to apply to the police station to reinvestigate the death of the eldest son. Wang Jinxiang and Zhang Quan were forcibly recalled. The people found by Aunt Dai had been keeping an eye on Wang Jinxiang's parents-in-law's house. When there was movement in their house, we also came. Only then did we have the opportunity to see the two missing people. Before we came to the police station, my eldest sister-in-law also called my eldest uncle's house and asked him if he knew about my father-in-law. The whereabouts of the debtor were found, and he wanted to ask my father-in-law to go with him to collect the debt, but my eldest sister-in-law said that this was not true. She asked my eldest uncle about my father-in-law's whereabouts to let my eldest uncle pass on a message to my father-in-law. After all, my father-in-law has been supported by my eldest uncle's family for more than a month. The two brothers have a good relationship and treat us as outsiders, but my father-in-law has been eating at my eldest uncle's house for more than a month. The people in my eldest uncle's family don't bother me with my father-in-law, and now they can kick him out of the house, they are eager to do so. So we also met my father-in-law. In the police station, I had the honor of seeing a big drama. It turned out that Zhang Quan was not Wang Jinxiang's cousin at all, but his lover. Wang Jinxiang contacted Zheng Quan after her husband died. Wang Jinxiang was ready to go with Zheng Quan at that time, but what a coincidence, before he left with Zheng Quan, my father-in-law, a generous idiot, had been serving him. They had to be his succor. Originally he didn't mean to cheat him, but he was so proactive, he thought he wasn't short of money anyway, so he could just take it. So, he used the excuse of asking my father-in-law to be a guarantor for Zheng Quan's loan and borrowed 200,000 yuan from the bank. Originally, they wanted to take the money and leave, but my father-in-law was so gullible. Not only did he not feel that they were cheating him, but he thought that he treated him as a relative, trusted him, and raised his son like his own grandson. He often bought this and that for him. They thought that if they didn't take advantage of it, they would be suckers. They were supported for nothing, so they wanted to take more advantage, and then they dragged it on until they got to the bank. On the day of debt collection, seeing that the matter was about to be exposed, they had to leave quickly. After listening to Wang Jinxiang's self-narration, I glanced at the father-in-law beside me who looked as pale as death. I was curious about his reaction when he heard such words. Unexpectedly, after listening, he just said to Zheng Quan and Wang Jinxiang, "I am helping you out of kindness. Since you are scheming against me like this, you should go to the bank and pay the money back when you have time." And then there was nothing else. But the mother-in-law was still cruel. She went up and grabbed his wide collar and asked him to return the 3,800 to her. "Why should I pay back the money you borrowed from the bank? Give me back the 3,800 or I will die here today. I will meet my elder sister." The police also came to stop them, but when Wang Jinxiang's mother-in-law heard about it, she went up and grabbed my father-in-law and refused to let go, asking, "When did you become so familiar with them? Why did you guarantee for them for no reason? Are you also responsible for borrowing money and killing my eldest son? Why are you so diligent and come to our house every day? How did you kill my son?" The police station was in chaos. Wang Jinxiang's parents-in-law and their family kept biting my father-in-law Wang Jinxiang and Zheng Quan, while my eldest sister-in-law and I took my mother-in-law and left quickly after the police took out all the cash in Zheng Quan's pocket and returned it to him. As expected, after the bank froze the assets, Zheng Quan could no longer use them. Bank card, but she also brought a lot of cash, more than 2,000 yuan. My mother-in-law wanted to thank her, but my father-in-law didn't tell her what his intentions were towards Wang Jinxiang. The police questioned her and she couldn't answer a word. However, after meeting my father-in-law at the police station, my mother-in-law completely gave up on him. She went back and scolded him for a long time, saying that her elder sister-in-law brought Xianxian to pay New Year's greetings during the Spring Festival, but she didn't even give her a red envelope. Xianxian even gave money to other people's children behind their backs. She has been so heartless for so many years. That night, my father-in-law came to the door and knocked. Because we changed the lock, she couldn't get in, so she banged the door from outside, disturbing the neighbors. We called the police, and the police came to coordinate and persuaded us. We opened the door and let the people in, but I held my mother-in-law and wouldn't let her open the door. I told the police who were mediating that my father-in-law had a tendency to be violent and had beaten me so hard that I almost had a miscarriage. She also owed a lot of debts outside and stole money from home. I asked the police not to tell me about respecting elders. If we let people in and someone died in the house, would you be responsible? The police who were mediating were speechless and didn't care. They just left. The neighbors who were outside listening to the mediation process kept looking at my father-in-law, and soon they also bumped into the door and hid back home. My father-in-law kicked the door again from outside, and left when he saw that we still didn't open the door. Later he came to open it a few more times the door, but we never opened it and he didn't come either. Soon, the mother-in-law's divorce lawsuit also had a second trial. My father-in-law was present. His mother-in-law tried to force him to leave in court, but he had no money to hire a lawyer. He was completely speechless when his mother-in-law complained and cursed about the grievances she had suffered over the years. "Mother-in-law, if you don't want to come here and embarrass yourself for the third time, just agree to a divorce by agreement. Otherwise, I will scold you next time you come." My father-in-law wanted to save face, so he agreed to a divorce by agreement, but he wanted a share of the 48,000 yuan from selling a house in the countryside. My mother-in-law refused to give it to him, saying that my father-in-law had not earned a penny for the family over the years, so why should he share the money from selling the house in a divorce? My father-in-law said that if he didn't give it to me, he would not divorce. Then the two of them were deadlocked again. There was no other way but to mediate. "You should give him half of the money from mom's sale of the house. It's a shared property between husband and wife, so it should be divided equally." After talking to my mother-in-law, I talked to my father-in-law. "This is the last time I'll call you dad. You'd better quit while you're ahead and agree to divorce after you get 24,000. The court relies on evidence. You don't have any evidence to prove that you have contributed to this family, and you have also stolen the assets that you and my mom share. Even if there is a third trial, you will lose the case. You'd better take care of yourself." After hearing this, my father-in-law's face turned green with rage. He kept chasing me and scolding me, calling me a scourge, saying that his family was fine before I married into the family, and it was all because of me who ruined them. The spirit has destroyed his family. The sarcastic curses made me want to cover my belly. The baby is already 6.5 months old, and his little ears can already hear sounds. I don't want the baby to hear such vicious sounds. The mother-in-law was listening on the side, and then she slapped her on the face, saying, "Shut up." The father-in-law was so angry that he cried and wanted to hit the mother-in-law, but the mother-in-law said, "If you dare to do it, I will kill you here today. It's just paying with my life anyway. I've had enough of being with someone like you. I should have died a few years ago. Lingling shouldn't have spent money on my medical treatment. If I die, will you see whether Lingling and Lily can support me? I will raise you." My mother-in-law frightened me, and my father-in-law was speechless. I am glad that I left my mother. Don't keep talking about death. The child still depends on you, the grandmother. I married far away to your family. Lin and I have no experience in taking care of children. What should we do if something happens to you? I won't say it anymore. A few days later, she and my mother-in-law got a divorce certificate. I gave her 24,000 in cash. She returned to our house and packed up her things. Before May Day, my eldest sister-in-law transferred and sold the car for 78,000. I wanted to give her the building fee, but my eldest sister-in-law didn't want the money and transferred it all to my card. When my husband came back on May Day, my father-in-law she came to my house and made a scene. She tried her best to accuse me of my crimes in front of my husband, but my husband drove his father-in-law out. After driving his father-in-law away, my husband came back and put a face on me. I thought he was angry because I acted without my permission, and I was prepared for the worst. If you think I have gone too far, just tell me directly. I can accept divorce, although I will be very sad to divorce you. Before I finished speaking, my husband hugged me in his arms. Am I angry about this? I am angry because you didn't listen to the doctor. The doctor originally told you to take care of the baby and worry less, but you still worry about all this. You lost my child, will you compensate me? I pouted. He is not angry because of your parents about divorce. Do you think I haven't persuaded our mother to divorce? Am I as indifferent as you think? That's why I have been unable to persuade her for so many years. Tell me, how did you persuade our mother? I licked my lips and asked her weakly, can I write about your father and tell you in the story? Will anyone read your story about him? Who else can you write about better than him? There is nothing to write about people like him. I am too lazy to mention him. Just give it a try. His only value of existence may be the material for your pen to buy milk powder money for our baby. Do you still need material? I can tell you a lot. For example, when I was 7 or 8 years old, I wanted to watch cartoons, but he wouldn't let me. I wanted to change the channel, but he wouldn't let me. So my sister came up to help me change the channel. But he got angry because the program he was watching was changed, so he kicked my sister out. My sister was bleeding and crying on the ground, but he ignored her. There is another thing that I remember very clearly. My mother used to work in the fields, and he played cards with others at home every day. My sister had to prepare meals for the family when she was less than 10 years old. Once he came back from outside after losing the game, and my mother didn't come back. My sister asked him to wait for my mother, but he overturned the table and said that my sister was as nagging as my mother, and that it was not necessary. That was enough. I hugged my husband tightly and my heart ached so much. Oh, I used to be curious about my husband's growth experience, and I always liked to chase him and ask about the past, but he never liked to talk about it. Now he tells it like pouring beans and I'm scared again. After listening to my husband, our family's life will get better. Isn't that necessary? Your husband is so capable. We have already found a buyer for the house in the county. My husband came back and sold it these 2 days. My husband took 2 more days off and moved to Nanjing with us. I'm embarrassed to ask the other party for debt. Zhang Quan and Wang Jinxiang have not paid off their bank loans until now, and my mother-in-law was implicated by my father-in-law before the divorce and became a dishonest person. She can't use her bank card for anything, but fortunately he never travels far. And when he buys things he either pays in cash or asks my husband and me to buy them. My husband and mother-in-law also changed their phone numbers and cut off contact with my father-in-law. My husband and I had a baby in July, a full-term boy. After the confinement, my husband and I went to see 2 second-hand houses he had liked before, and asked me to buy whichever one I liked. I picked a school district house and settled on it. After the transfer procedures were completed, our family of 4 moved in. Life without my father-in-law is so blissful. As for my husband's biological father, I heard from my eldest sister-in-law that he was miserable in his hometown. He had been staying at my eldest uncle's house, spending money lavishly, but had a bad reputation. Because the police investigation showed that the death of Wang Jinxiang's husband was indeed an accident, but Wang Jinxiang's parents-in-law didn't believe it, and they spread the news about her father-in-law's character in the village, making her father-in-law completely infamous. The villagers spread gossip quickly, and now they have poked his spine and scolded him for making him unable to raise his head in his hometown. The eldest sister-in-law also said that her father-in-law had eaten 2 meals at her house, and said that Xianxian was in school now and it was inconvenient, so she wanted to help her pick up her son Xianxian from school, but he refused. Didn't he think I didn't know what he was up to? He wanted to live in our house for 2 days first. He was showing off now, but he would definitely do nothing in the future. He would just eat and drink at our house. I saw through him a long time ago. My eldest sister-in-law, my elder sister, complained that she wanted me to take care of him in his old age, but he was not worthy of it. My elder sister-in-law also said that my father-in-law tried to get my husband's contact information through him, but he didn't give it to her. Later, I don't know if he had squandered all his money or was kicked out by my eldest uncle's house. He went to the town to find a job as a porter, competing with a group of young people for work, and could barely support himself. Then he often complained to people about how hard and tiring it was. My eldest uncle contacted him several times, asking him to feel sorry for my father-in-law and take him over to enjoy a good life, but my elder sister-in-law ignored him. It's obvious that you shouldn't pay attention to him either. He is a smart man. If he has no money, he will always find a way. I will definitely ignore you. I dare not ignore you. I'm really scared. The whole article is over.